And welcome back to Puck on the Parkway. James Burley with Daniel Rebane. And boy, oh boy, is it an interesting time to be the New Jersey Devils. You can't finish a game in 60 minutes, but you find a way to win no matter what. Half the team's on the injured list, and the latest one, I mean, let's not bury the lead here, Dan. I'd ask you how you're doing, but I know how you're doing. You're as frustrated as every other New Jersey Devils fan is. Um, why don't you break the news? Why don't you let everybody know out there what happened to our star boy, Jack Hughes?
Yeah, I mean, out of the blue, like real, just literally out of the blue, someone, Elliot Freeman just writing about it. Doesn't even like tweet it out, but in his column, tweets out that Jack Hughes is gonna be sidelined for 2 months after he sliced himself either with a steak knife, a broken glass, something. We still don't know the full details about this, but yeah, Jack Hughes, freak injury, but is gonna be out 2 months and like you said, just adds to the list of already injured players for this New Jersey Devils team.
Yeah, I saw a statistic on Twitter. I don't know who to credit for it, but Jack Hughes is going to be out for 8 weeks, and that means that in his young professional career, he'll only have played 65 or more games once, and it was the season he got 99 points in 2022-23. It's a huge blow for New Jersey, who, while have a lot of guys coming back from the injured list in the coming days, we think it's another huge loss. Their top guy, their best player, and Jack Hughes going down at a steakhouse in Chicago after a team dinner. Supposedly, and this was I believe to be confirmed by Christy Flannery, that he leaned his hand on a wine glass and it shattered in his hand, and that required surgery. So the fact that it requires surgery suggests that perhaps something with his ligaments or tendons is affected by the broken glass. And for that to require surgery and only be a 2 month recovery, I think is honestly like on the lucky side. And I hope
Yeah.
that that 8 weeks number doesn't become a bigger number over time, but I'm worried that might be the case. Um, Dan, we're going to talk about a bunch of different things. We're going to talk about how the Devils have fared since we last spoke, how they're going to fare on the rest of their road trip. They're going to go down to Florida and then finish up in Philly before coming back home. But we also are going to talk about where the Devils go from here. Do they move for the deadline type acquisition earlier than expected because they're going to be without Jack Hughes? First and foremost, before we talk about any player, how does this now affect the dynamic of the Devils? He didn't play in their most recent game against the Washington Capitals, a game that they were the better team for most of. They gave up 2 goals in the third period, but still found a way to win in the shootout. Simone Nemitz is the man of the hour at the moment, so maybe maybe he can play second line center. Maybe Nemitz goes up. Who knows? What do you think, Dan?
Yeah, I just want to say it was NHL News that had that tweet about Jack Hughes not playing or playing 65 games once in his career. So shout out to him, great account. I believe Dave Pagnotta also reported that it was his pinky finger as well that he had the surgery on. So, that sucks. And yeah, I think, it probably did do some damage to his ligament. That's probably why he's out 2 months. I think maybe a cut would have been a bit faster recovery. I'm not a doctor, but yeah, this is going to be a very difficult thing. I mean, already dealing with missing two of your better defensive defensemen, depth is already get tested in the forward group. And now your superstar, the face of the franchise, goes down on an injury that didn't happen on the ice. And like he said, you can't prepare for freak injuries that happen, whether that's falling into the boards because you were tripped or cutting your finger at a team dinner. Like freak things happen, and unfortunately for Jack Hughes, every freak thing happens to Jack Hughes at this point in his career, which kind of sucks because it's just taking away from the level of player he brings day in and day out. But like you said, I mean, Tom Fitzgerald, this is going to be on him. I think last year you could probably convince yourself not to give up assets for, top six center at the deadline when the team was already kind of falling to the wayside even before all the injuries. But now I think, first in the Metro, first, I believe still tied for first in the NHL. You have to do something now. I think this is the time you saved that move for this year, not doing it last year. So I think he has to go all in this year and reward this team for the play that they're having. So it's going to test this team. Dawson Mercer is going to be playing second line center instead of third line center now. He's looked pretty good in that role for third line center. You know, there's still some hiccups here and there when he's playing center, but I think he's improved this year. But I think it's behind him. That's going to be the real worry about Lamico playing third line, Glendening at fourth line. Can those two kind of hold their own, in those spots? We've seen Glendening hold his own for most of the season, but it's Lamico playing that third line center. I think he was going to be a rotational guy at the fourth line center role, and now he's going to be asked to provide some offense that he hasn't provided all season. So that's probably where this team needs to add is center depth immediately, and if they can go get that big fish at center, they have to do it as soon as possible.
Yeah, Jack Hughes is a guy that has enough injury issues on the ice. You definitely don't want anything off the ice to come up and bite him, and
All
the
I
wine
want to
glass
say
might
is
have just done that.
all I want to say is I am protesting steakhouses from here until he comes back. I wasn't going beforehand, but now I am officially protesting steakhouses all around the country. I am not going. I'm standing with my guy Jack Hughes. Well, all joking aside, not the steakhouse's fault. Let's not leave dirty reviews for them just because Jack Hughes got hurt in a freak accident. Come on, guys.
Yeah. Ridiculous. There's some couple commenters. I saw one was from I think Parsippany. This is stupid behavior. I think it's also stupid. I've seen some people suggest that Jack Hughes should be moved on from because he's
Yeah,
too injury prone.
that's
I mean, this is a freak
crazy.
accident. Like, I'm sorry, but the Devils have never had a player as good as Jack Hughes. They just haven't. This like, I,
Offensively, at
unfortunately,
least, yes.
I wasn't old enough to remember very vividly what the team looked like in the late 90s, early 2000s. But I know in my entire lifetime, there's never been a player like Jack Hughes on the New Jersey Devils. Um, Simply the greatest forward this team's ever had. And that's coming from someone who is a hockey fan because of Patrick Elias.
Mhm.
Uh, he blows Patrick away in terms of just how good he is of a hockey player. The notion that any Devils fan would want to see him get traded is beyond stupid to me. So I'll leave it at that. Um, the Devils kind of look like a two-line team at the moment, unfortunately. When
Yeah,
you just look at the drop off from line two to line three, it's pretty stark. And the lines I'm referring to, of course, are the ones that came out from practice during the day. Of course, they had some time in their road trip, so they came back home, which is always very valuable when you're playing away games. That you have the opportunity to come back home, be with
yep.
family,
Mhm.
get practice on home ice again. So they've got Gritsyuk playing with Heishier and Bratt. Um, Arseny Gritsyuk scored a howitzer of a power play goal
Yeah.
against the Capitals. It was awesome to see. The fact that he's getting more time with those guys is only going to be good for him. He's more than capable of playing top 6 minutes, and it's honestly, I think it's harmful to the team when he's not in the top six.
Yeah.
And then the second line, Timo Meyer, Dawson Mercer centering. We've talked a lot about Dawson Mercer on this show, Dan. He's been fantastic this season, both on the wing where he's expected to play and as a center when he's needed to go there. I have no concerns about him being the second nine center when it comes to his offensive output, but now he's going to start to get more unfavorable matchups as a center,
Yeah.
and we'll see how he deals with that. He should have so much confidence right now, and I hope that continues. And he's going to have a little help now with Connor Brown coming back in the lineup. He was practicing on that third line. I hope to see him. We thought he was going to come back perhaps sooner, but it's kind of a one for one now because Cody Glass is back injured as well. So just to read off the list of injured players, technically Evgeny Dodonov is still injured, but it looks like he's on his way back. He was on the
Oh,
ice. Zach McEwen, who we have both said was looked like a perfect fit for the fourth line in the 2 games that he's played, sandwiched between injuries. Of course, he played in the
yeah.
first game, injured, came back, injured. That's too bad for him. And then, as I mentioned, Cody Glass just joins Brett Pesce, Jonathan Kovacevic, and Jack Hughes on the injured list. Dougie Hamilton also on his way back, which is big news. Um, The one thing that upsets me about Hamilton coming back, and we'll talk about Shimon Nemitz because he's had his absolute best couple weeks of his career now. Um, the fact that Dougie Hamilton's going to come back means it's less power play time, less offensive responsibilities for a guy like Nemitz, who I think has shined really brightly in those areas. We'll talk about that later. Let's continue talking about Jack Hughes because this is the big news right now. If the Devils are going to go out and Tom Fitzgerald says, this is our season to win it. We can't risk 2 months without our star player. We need at least a stopgap solution for the top six centermen, and then this guy can play as the third line center for the rest of the way. Identify some names for us because this is a real possibility the Devils go in this direction.
Yeah, and I think there's two names that everybody knows, and I try to do more research and try to find guys that potentially are available, right? Maybe bad starts to the year, a team's doing bad and they're looking to shake things up, like the Blues. The Blues just don't have any real good centers that they're probably trying to move off of right now. So the two names are Nazem Kadri of Calgary and Ryan O'Reilly down in Nashville, and we've been linked with Ryan O'Reilly before. It just was going to take a lot to get him last year. So, maybe things change this year. So I think those are the two guys. Both are 35 or about to turn 35. So they bring that veteran presence. They're still playing top line minutes. Both of them getting uh, close or at 20 minutes per game. So it's going to be on Tom Fitzgerald. Is he willing to go all in to help this team out, stabilize itself until Jack Hughes comes back? Because once Jack Hughes comes back, you either have Nazem Kadri or Ryan O'Reilly as your third line center. I think you're really going somewhere with with your top nine having those three centers of Nico Hischier, Jack Hughes, and one of those two guys. So, any thoughts from your perspective on either? Because personally, I know it's going to cost a lot, but what are your thoughts on making that move?
I'm certainly not convinced that this is something that they have to do.
Mhm.
I do think that they should be in a win now mentality. I mean, you can't take these players' careers for granted.
Yeah,
Like I think Jack Hughes is a good example for that. Um, but the fact is, I don't think the Devils. And look, we're still one game into the Jack Hughes injured hand era of this season,
yeah,
but I don't think the Devils looked so bad last night, other than the fact that they just looked worn down and tired. Um, I still think that there's a winning team without Jack Hughes temporarily. I don't think it's a Stanley Cup winning team, but I think it's a above 500 team. And I know that's not the ambition that most Devils fans would like to hear, is that we're just going to try to stay afloat for 2 months without him. Um, but like I said, this could be longer than 2 months.
exactly.
If you're doing the math as well, the Olympics starts on February 5th.
Yeah,
2 months from now is mid-January. That starts to get into the area of uncertainty. If Jack Hughes isn't ready in those games at the end of January, is he going to be available for Team USA at the Olympics? Now that for Jack Hughes, I want him to be there so badly, right? Like that's obviously means so much to him in this career. You saw how important the Four Nations was to him last winter. So I'd be gutted for him not to go, but at the same time, that time could be used rehabbing and getting him back fully healthy. So maybe that's something we see. And if it gets that long, then I think you really make a big mistake if you don't go for somebody now. So with that said, I would be very happy to see Ryan O'Reilly in black and red. I would be very happy to see Nazem Kadri in black and red. What do I think they have to do to get that done? I think you have to throw a little more Calgary's way to get Kadri than you would have to get O'Reilly. Kadri's got a 7 million cap hit. You said O'Reilly's 4.5.
yeah,
Um, we talked about. You mentioned a couple of options. You trade a couple prospects and a pick, a high pick or a couple picks, second round, third round, and a prospect, a Lenny Hamanaho type. You mentioned Daniil I'm okay with dishing away some decent prospects because I mean, like we said, the Devils have a problem of riches when it comes to defensemen, young defensemen specifically, especially young right shot defensemen. Um, so, but I know that some of those names are being held out in a potential trade for another Hughes brother, if that comes to fruition down the line. Um, I wish I knew more about the specificities of Jack Hughes' injury and the timeline if we had a concrete answer on that. I mean, 8 weeks seems to be the prevailing theory. I think they could survive without Jack Hughes for 8 weeks. But if it gets 10 weeks, 12 weeks, I don't know. We start to get into 2024, 25 territory, and then they look really silly for not making a bigger move at the deadline. I think we were critical of their deadline last year, Dan. And then in the end, I think they kind of made the right call, not putting too many chips into a basket and not, sacrificing the future of the team for last year, but otherwise was not the year that they were going to be a contender. I mean, that much was abundantly clear, even when the team was healthy. So I don't know. I think some more time's going to have to pass before they make a decision. I know we're going to talk about this next, but I'm just going to say it. John Beecher on waivers in Boston, another, really not a top six center by any
No.
stretch. He'd be a power forward, bottom six guy who could fill in on the third line, certainly now. So a guy like Juho Lammikko is not doing it. Glenn Denning's not doing it. Dawson Mercer can be comfortable playing as a second line center for the time being. And then maybe when Cody Glass comes back, that's your third line, fourth line center right there, and that's a decent duo. Glenn Denning, though, shout out to him. We were a little bit critical of his play. Huge in overtime, winning 4 out of 4
Oh
faceoffs
yeah.
against Washington. Absolutely massive. So got to give flowers where they're due because they're few and far between for certain players right now because there's so many injuries. It's been taking team efforts for the Devils, and that's what's been a lot of fun to watch. Your thoughts on Beecher? What would you give in a trade for a guy like Kadri or a guy like O'Reilly?
Yeah, I think putting a claim in for Beecher at the very least, you just need more depth at center. There's when you look at Utica, there's not many
Yeah,
centers that you're looking to call up in this time of need for the Devils. Like there's some decent guys like a Bordalo, but he's more playing wing down there. You have Ryan Schmelzer, who's a older center, who's on an NHL deal, but at this point he's probably not coming up at this point. So you kind of need that depth. So hopefully nobody else puts a claim in for him and you're able to get him off of waivers because I don't believe the Devils have a high priority with how good they've been. So that's an easy claim for me. He can easily play in your bottom six and even when everybody comes back healthy, maybe he plays good enough where he's possibly your four line center going forward. So um that's a real hope for tomorrow that nobody else puts a claim in for him. And then looking at Kadri and O'Reilly, I think the first round pick's gonna have to be in there, right? Based on where we think the Devils are gonna be, it's gonna be a late first round pick anyway. Um, but I think I kind of want to get back to your point where nothing's guaranteed, and when you have older goaltenders like a Jacob Markstrom or Jake Allen, you got your elite players, your core players getting older by the day. I mean, you didn't go for it last year, and I understood it just because the play kind of dictated that even before the injuries, you weren't playing the best. This year is the opposite story. All your players are getting injured, and you're still able to win games. You need to reward that. You need to go all in. I'm not saying go all in where it's you're trading your top elite prospects for a Ryan O'Reilly or a Nazem Kadri. That's not what I'm saying. But if you're able to go to Calgary, which you have a working relationship with already, multiple trades with their GM, if you can go to them and be like, "We'll give you our 2026 first, Lenny Hamanaho and Daniil Orlov, who's a rising prospect down in the KHL, but can't come over until 2028." I think you do that, especially if you're able to get like 50% retention or something like that, where you bring the cap down under 5 million. You do that. I think you do that. Kadri has multiple years left on his contract, so it's just not this year that you're giving up all that assets for an upcoming UFA. he'd have, I believe, 3 more years after this season. So that's a guy that you can build around as your 3C going forward once everybody's fully healthy. But I mean, when you have the guy a pedigree like Kadri who brings a playing style that the Devils are sorely missing, a guy that can muck it up, be that rat type of player that we saw early in his career. He's not going to win faceoffs, but you got again, like you have a Luke Glendening winning faceoffs. You got Nico Hischier winning faceoffs. He doesn't need to be that main faceoff guy for you, but he can still produce. I read on NHL Edge, a great website for analytics, that Nazem Kadri is in the 99th percentile in distance skated this year at 65.5 miles per hour. For a guy who's 35, he's still got the legs underneath him. His fastest time or his fastest speed clock this year is over 22 miles per hour as well. So he still has that juice in him. Um, and he's got 4 goals, 7 assists. Um, Shooting percentage is very interesting. It's only at 6%. Funny thing is, he's in the 97th percentile in shots total this year at 65. He has 15 high danger chances and only 4 goals. My thinking is he comes into New Jersey playing more time with better players in a winning situation. I think that shot percentage is due for positive regression. So I think Nazem Kadri is probably the main guy I'm looking at just because he brings many more things that I'm looking for that the Devils are missing. I think Ryan O'Reilly's a great player, but he's not that guy that's gonna muck it up. He's not gonna be that rat in the playoffs that's gonna get under people's skins. He's gonna be a great player, winning faceoffs, producing offense. But I think Nazem Kadri is a guy that the Devils are missing, especially if they want to be a Stanley Cup winner. Just look at Florida, look at Tampa, look at some of these recent Stanley Cup winners. They all had those type of players where you're like, man, I hate playing against that guy. But if he was on my team, like a Brad Marchand, that those are the type of players you need to win. So Nazem Kadri would be the guy that I would give up that trade package of a first, a Lenny Hemanau, even though we like Lenny, and a rising prospect, a D prospect, and Daniil Orlov. Daniil Orlov. I would definitely do that in a heartbeat, especially if you can get 50% retention.
Yeah, I think I mean, it would require a pretty good haul for a guy like Kadri. Um, and Calgary are sort of in a place where, they're not entirely sure who they are. Are they
Yeah,
a team
they
that
they
could
need
sneak into the
assets.
playoffs? Are they going to build for the future? This would kind of help them lean into an
I
identity
mean,
one way or the other.
they
And
are in they are in the basement of the West. So
they're in the basement of the West, but how many teams in the NHL are above 500? It's like 95% of the league, and Calgary's not far off it. Like I really do think that the standings as they look now are not going to look even close to what they look like at the end of the season, just because there's been too much parity. Things are going to start to widen at some point. I guess that doesn't bode well for the team that's already in the basement, but I digress. I'll make a case for O'Reilly, not because I think he'd be the better option, but
no, we need his case. Yeah.
because I do think it's the more attainable one. I mean, we were just talking about before we clicked record that a week and a half ago he was in the locker room lamenting his own performances in Nashville, saying he can't complete a 6 foot pass, and that he's only ever had one good season in his career, which is objectively not true. He's got 13 points in 20 games. It was 20 games, right?
Yeah.
At this point in the season, like this is an excellent
He's
NHL
shooting
player as far as I know in
17%.
his career. It like honestly made me sad watching how dejected he looked in that clip. He's a guy that maybe could be looking for a confidence boost, and I can't think of a better arena to do that in than in the Prudential Center in Newark, surrounded by some really great players. Do I think that that's maybe that I you were reading that as this is a player who's not confident right now, and perhaps the Devil should avoid going in that direction. Maybe I'll flip the glass half full and say maybe this is what he needs. I don't know. Suffice it to say, it would be a cheaper option. I think it's one where you don't have to send away a first round pick, or if you do send a first round pick, you don't have to send a Lenny Hemenahu, who, like you mentioned, we're both think very highly of. I think maybe you can get away with a second round pick and an Orlov type, maybe a first round pick and Orlov. a second and a third, and or something like that, where you don't have to necessarily give away one of your bigger offensive prospects, because like we said, the Devils plenty of D prospects that they can hold on to. A forward prospect feels a little bit more valuable coming out of Utica at the moment. Another name that I thought we'd just float out because this is digging out of your bag here, Dan. You said Evgeny Malkin, mid-season trade acquisition for the Devils at the
Looking
deadline.
good. He's looking good.
If the Penguins are struggling, which they admittedly are not, then a guy like Malkin, who's got his contract up at the end of the season, could very well be shipped out. There's still time for the Penguins to start playing like we all thought they would, but I mean, Sidney Crosby and Malkin are those guys are timeless. So fun to watch. I honestly regret spending so much of my youth and my energy in my youth hating Sidney Crosby. He's still not my favorite. Don't get me wrong. I'd get happy if he took a penalty against the Devils and he's not on the ice for it. Believe me, but I mean, the Penguins have been fun to watch. I didn't think I'd be
Yeah.
saying that, but they're a hard nosed team, man. They're not an easy team to beat. It took the Devils until the shootout during this homestand.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, I think that actually brings us conveniently into let's just talk about the last few games. We haven't
Yeah.
spoken since they came back from California. The night we aired that last episode, Devils went to OT. They beat Montreal. Then, still in Jersey, they took care of the Penguins in the shootout. Jake Allen was excellent in that game. He mentioned pregame previously that in his career he's had a bad run against Sidney Crosby. He came up huge and denied him in the shootout that led to the
Stonewalled
win.
him.
Jesper Bratt with a filthy shootout goal. He's the man. Jesper Bratt is the gift that keeps on giving. He truly might be the best player in the NHL. Shout out to the Brat Pack. Then the Devils did fall to the Islanders in OT. Matt Barzal, wrong-footed. Did Barzal have the? No, Horvat had the OT winner, I thought. I'm mixing it up. They
I
both
think it was
scored.
Barzal.
Yeah, Barzal scored the one in OT. Horvat had the one earlier in the game. That was a great back and forth hockey game. The Islanders are kind of legit. I'm not gonna lie. Are they a team that should be as talented as the Devils on paper? No, but they'll skate and fight every inch of the way. And Ilya Sorokin was amazing in that game. Just absolutely so good. I think if Sorokin didn't have as good a game as he did then, the Devils score on one of their power plays late in the third period and win that game outright in regulation. And we're not talking about the fact that the Devils have played their last 5 games into overtime or the shootout. But then they went on the road and beat Chicago in another really good tight game. Shimon Nemitz with the hat trick and the OT winner. And then he does it in the shootout against the Capitals, a game that I thought the Devils looked the better team, but had chances on both ends. They really were tired in that third period. Brendan Dillon left and came back in that game, although he didn't skate at practice today. We hope that there's nothing too serious going on there because, boy, that would be a huge loss if Brendan Dillon steps out of the lineup. But then the Devils took care of it in the shootout. Nemitz, again, snuck it through the wickets of Logan Thompson. And here we are talking about a team that's won 4 of their last 5. I mean, it's pretty darn good. It's going to be interesting to see if they can keep that momentum going on the road because they left a little bit to be desired in the California trip. Now, when you got to go to Tampa, you got to go to Florida. Not the travel is not so much of a struggle as it is when you have to go to California, but it's still 2 good hockey teams on the road, and then they got to come back up north and play against the Flyers. So, your thoughts on the last few games? You think we're going to see overtime tomorrow night in Tampa?
Um, we finally get to play. I'll say before I talk about the homestand, we get to finally play a team that's as injured as us in Tampa Bay. So that's good to see. But that homestand, I think we kind of talked about what would be a good homestand was, getting 4, 5 points, and that was get 5 points on that homestand. I think, and in that Islanders game, I know they lost, but that might have been one of their best games of the season. Like they were just all out dominating that game.
From a neutral standpoint, the most enjoyable hockey game they've played this season, and they've played some good thrillers, especially in the last weeks with all the overtime.
Yeah.
But that game was just objectively it was a good contrast of two very different styles of teams that had star players on either end who came up big. Great goaltending. I've loved it. Yeah, but continue.
Yeah, and I think, getting out of those three games with, playing Montreal, who's a good team. Pittsburgh has shown they're a good team. And now the Islanders, their record, is still hit and miss. They'll lose games here and there, but they're a good team. So getting five points out of those 6 games was really good heading into the road trip. And I mean the Simone Nemec game, I think, you know, when you go down and you're looking at this game, you're like, man, the Devils are playing really well, but again, they're getting stonewalled by Spencer Knight. Spencer Knight was having the game of his life, and then Simone Nemec coming out of nowhere, scoring a backhand to get a goal before the second period ended, right? To get it even
Yes.
and then gets another goal. One timer that kind of fluttered into the net from right near the goal line, but then that shootout goal. I mean the overtime goal. I mean, first it's the pass from Markstrom to find Nemec coming off the bench, skating along the blue line. The confidence to pick your spot, pick the top right corner. It was just beautiful all around. Hat trick, the third defenseman in Devils history to score a hat trick. I mean, to do it on not only just to do it in a game, but to do it in prime time on TNT. I think that really just showed what type of player Simone Nemec can be when everything is hitting. And you know, through his run, he's had some times where the defense is lacking, where he gets caught, but I think he's improved in portions of his game defensively this season. He's much more positionally sound this year. He's not scrambling for the most part. Most of the time, he's just getting caught up the ice where he's leaving his defense partner on a 2-on-1. And that's still not good, but I think eventually he'll get to a point where he's like a Luke Hughes where he can get back. But to show that offensive, firepower, I didn't think he'd be able to do that where he's scoring a hat trick in a game and showing a shot like he has. I mean, what a game for him. I want to get your perspective on the game, on that specific game, because I was in my room watching it. My parents were asleep, thinking they were still awake. I wanted to go see what my dad thought. He's just knocked out in the room next to me, just clapping. Thank God they didn't wake up. But yeah, what a game from Simone Nemec there.
You asked me to talk about the game, but it's hard to isolate just that game for Nemitz because it's been a series of games in a row where he's looked that good, where he's looked like a difference maker. He's looked like a second overall pick. Honestly,
Mm,
I mean, he responded so well to criticism in the playoffs last year, where obviously he had the big goal against Carolina. That was hugely important to win that game in double overtime and give the fans something to enjoy from albeit 5 playoff games. He's looked even better, obviously with a hat trick. I mean, you can't say enough about him, but it's a guy who's accepted responsibility now. It's a guy who's the power play starts and he could be on PP1. He doesn't have to wait for Luke Hughes to get off the ice. He could start it and has looked very dangerous doing it. I've been waiting for him to get an opportunity like this. I think, a lot of other teams, we would have already known this about Simone Nemec because, he's not been given the opportunities because there's just too many good blue liners in front of him.
yeah,
And we've been critical of his play when those guys have been in the lineup, but not when the guys are out of the lineup because we understand how important and good of a player he is. When you don't have Dougie Hamilton, you don't have Brett Pesce, you don't have Kovacevic to compare him to. He still needs work to do defensively. We've known this about Nemitz. We've known this about Luke Hughes. But what we saw in that Chicago game was a player who is playing with confidence, playing without fear, who honestly the team can turn to when things get tough.
yeah.
And that's why I see him hopefully, he's certainly a lot younger than Dougie Hamilton. I'm not saying the Devils need to trade Dougie Hamilton to get a Quinn Hughes type, but I certainly believe that Simone Nemitz can be the guy, offensive defenseman, right shot guy for a long time for this team. I think it's unfair to him that he's had to be behind so many other good offensive D-men and be forced into situations where he's played not to his strengths, but essentially to his weaknesses. And again, for a young player, you want them to work on their weaknesses, but uh, I just don't think he's been given the platform to be as effective as possible until guys come out of the lineup and then we see just how good he is, which, I'm never rooting for. But I'm very happy to see him have this moment. He fully deserves it. Um, people were really ready to give up on him
Yeah.
um, through most of last season, actually. And I don't think that was fair at all. Um, yeah, I'm very happy to see him succeed, and it excites me about the future of the Devils' blue line, especially.
Yeah, I mean, to and then to go into the next game, right?
And yeah,
Um, and just to build off that, where the Devils have a good game, and they get to that third period and kind of have to scrap and claw to get that extra point and get to the to overtime and the shootout. And who's stepping up fourth for the Devils? It's Simone Nemec.
and
And
credit to Sheldon Keefe for going to the guy, the young defenseman, the hot hand, confident guy. Always a good choice to do in the shootout.
and when he stepped on the ice, I was like, that's an interesting thing. That's interesting to go with that. And then he scores the winner and then gives the crowd a hey, what's going on? What's up?
Love it. Love the
Like
personality.
it just shows what type of player he is. Um, I mean, the ceiling is there for this type of player. It's just about getting there. And again, he's just so young. He's again, like you said, there's you named off of three guys that are ahead of him in the lineup for if they're all healthy. Dougie
He's
Hamilton,
D-man number 7 when the full blue line is healthy. He doesn't have a spot in the team.
yeah, like
It's
Dougie
it's not fair to
Hamilton,
the kid.
Brett Pesci, Jonathan Kovacevic. There's so many good players, and that shows the depth of this team, especially with how they drafted defensively over the past couple of years. And it really is just on Simone Nemec to go and take one of those guys' jobs. And with how he's playing right now, he might end up doing that with Dougie Hamilton.
That's the thing. The only job he's taking on the right side of defense would be Dougie's because we've seen how indispensable a guy like Brett Pesci is. And the fact that Kovacevic is also not there, I talked about this last time. That's both your shutdown guys on the right side done.
Yeah,
Not permanently, of course, but you need to have more defense on this Devils blue line. The offense, they've got plenty of it.
yeah,
Um, Nemitz is not going to take a lineup spot from Kovacevic. He's not going to take it from Pesci. God forbid, knock on wood, a Luke Hughes gets injured, he would step in there, right? But other than that, and Dougie, he's going to be the seventh guy, and that sucks for him because he is so much better than a seventh D man in the
yeah.
NHL. I think on a lot of other teams, he would be their premier offensive defenseman. And it's a good problem to have if you're the Devils. Another good problem to have is two starting caliber goaltenders, which I've said now a couple times. I'm not so sure if Jacob Markstrom is the starter. Granted, he had an injury, may still be recovering. Jack Allen has outperformed him in just about every game this season, with the exception of Markstrom's game against the Kings and Allen's a game against the Ducks, which I mean didn't help that they were back to back. Allen has been the guy this year. I mean he was a absolute joy to watch against the Capitals.
Oh,
I
those overtime saves.
Unbelievable how good he's been. I would say it right now. If the Devils are playing in Game 7 of the Stanley Cup tomorrow, Jake Allen is my goaltender. Now look, this is a reason. There's a reason the Stanley Cup is played in June and not in November. But I would go with the same methodology for why you go for Nemitz fourth in the shootout. You ride the hot hand. Jake Allen is the hot hand right now. He's got 4.3 goals save above expected. His goals against average is 2.24, and his expected goals against average is 2.67. So I mean obligatory, but you do the math there. Jacob Markstrom not doing as well. 870 save percentage, 3.67 goals against average. Yes, so still somewhat inflated by that 8-goal drubbing against the Avalanche, but you take that game away and he's still below 900, I believe. I'd have to double check on that. That was true a couple games ago, but I still think it is. Allen, for me, I was not so sure that they made the right move bringing him back this offseason. But the fact that they got it on a friendly deal and he's been this good, that's a Fitzgerald masterclass. How do you see the goaltending situation right now?
Yeah, and that's why you have a good backup goaltender now in the NHL. Because when your starter is kind of up and down with how he's playing, where some nights he's having a really good night. Even in that bad night where against Chicago, where he's flopping all over on the power play, it's just like, what are you doing, man? Just stay in the net. He's the one making the assist on the Simone Nemec play.
That's 100% true. I don't want to take that away from him because that was beautiful.
So
Reminded me of
again,
someone else.
so that's why you do have to have a good backup to come in and play those games on back-to-back nights or dispel the starter. I think the starter right now is still Jacob Markstrom. I still think they're going to do that, but Jake Allen's making a case for himself, and I'm not saying that he doesn't want to be the starter or he wants to be the starter. I think him and Markstrom have that relationship where they're able to play off of each other, and it just allows Jacob Markstrom to kind of fight for his job still, improve his game, and not overly be like worried that he will lose his job because he has that relationship with Allen. I think the coaches know that Jacob Markstrom's ceiling is better than Jake Allen's ceiling at this point that we know of. So I think it's just they just have a lot of time to get to that point where if everything remains the same heading into the playoffs, I would have to agree with you. But for the time being, Jake Allen is doing his job. He's performing when he's in the net. Maybe he's getting more games than he would have been expecting with Jacob Markstrom being on the sideline. So it's good that he's still performing the way he is. I just need to see Jacob Markstrom not perform the way we expect him to for a longer period of time before I kind of make the switch where, yeah, Jake Allen would be my starter.
Interesting. That was true last season. That has continued to be true in this season. Is that the Devils played better in front of Allen than they did in front of Markstrom, and that's to say nothing about the goaltenders themselves. It just so happened that the Devils scored more and conceded fewer in front of Allen, and that than they did with Markstrom. And that's been true so far this year. That doesn't necessarily mean that Markstrom's worse than Allen. It just means that the pattern has gone that way, and it suggests that the Devils play a little bit differently with the goaltenders in goal.
Didn't they do that for Schneider and Kincaid one year where Schneider
That is
couldn't
the
get,
reason why Kincaid started in the playoffs, and
yeah.
then they switched to Schneider and actually won a game. All that to say that Keith Kincaid at the end of that 2018 season did come up big in a lot of games. That
Yeah.
was an important season for us to make the playoffs. I was a freshman in high school. I never thought I would see the Devils back in the playoffs again. They proved me wrong. Taylor Hall had 96 points. Or did he have 96? I think he had
Yes.
96.
Yeah.
Had a 26
I was at game
game
3. I was
point
there for the
streak.
win.
I wish I was there, man. Wish I was there. I think I had soccer practice that night or something, and I could only catch the second and third periods. But either way, that was a great niche era in Devils history, the Taylor Hall season. And Keith Kincaid played a role in that as backup. Maybe Jake Allen can play, hopefully, a bigger role moving forward. Now, with that said, I mean, it's been Jake Allen's season. It's been Shimon Nemetz's season. Uh, we'll see if the rest of the team can follow suit. They got to go to Tampa tomorrow and then Florida. Or actually, probably when this comes out, they'll be playing Tampa. So tonight, we'll say. And then they play the Florida Panthers on Thursday, then the Flyers on Saturday. Before coming back home, they play a couple of games against the Red Wings and Blues before going back out on the road again.
What are your let's just say before we get out of here predictions for the road the remaining 3 games on the
That, that
road?
that's where I was going. I think they win one of the 2 games in Florida. I'd like to see them beat Tampa and, welcome back some of these guys to the lineup with a bang. I think maybe Florida might, wake us up a little bit. They've not been Stanley Cup good, but that's kind of what Florida always does throughout the regular season anyway. I'm confident that we can get 2 points out of a potential four there. And then this is the first against the Flyers. You got to beat the Flyers, man. I do not like losing to the Philadelphia Flyers. I don't think it's called Wells Fargo anymore. I was going to say Wells
No,
Fargo. I don't know what it's called.
we'll
Go,
still call it Wells Fargo.
yeah, go to Philly, go to Sports Illustrated, whatever it's called now, and take 2 points from the Flyers in Philly. Because I'm tired of people from South Jersey claiming to be from Pennsylvania. You're not. Sports. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, I see 4 points out of six. What about you?
Yeah, so I think I'll be really conservative and say they go 1-1-1, where
Okay.
they get the win against the Flyers. They lose in overtime to Tampa to keep the streak going, but then they lose to Florida in Florida. So if they come out of this road trip, right, it was 5 games, as three, what is it, 3-1-1, right? It would be 3-1-1. I mean, that's a real successful road trip right there.
Yeah.
So I'll go conservative 1-1-1. They get the win against the Flyers. Overtime loss against Tampa.
I got one. I got one for you, and then we'll wrap up. Which goaltenders do you start in which game and why?
Um, who started last game? Jake
It
Allen?
was
No,
Allen was against Washington.
Washington. I'd go. I'd go Markstrom against Tampa because Tampa's dealing with injuries. So I feel like that would be the easier of the games, in my opinion. Um, don't don't say Jake Allen's still the backup to me.
I
That's
understand.
me saying that's the easier game doesn't mean anything there.
No, I know.
Um,
I understand what you're saying. You want to build up because
yes,
Markstrom is your starter. You want to build his confidence. I
yeah.
understand
So
wholly. I would go with him against Tampa too.
and it's about going like I feel like they've just been going 1-1-1-1. They really haven't given a goalie back-to-back games in a while. So against Florida, Jake Allen, and then the Flyers, Jacob Markstrom.
Yeah, I would. I
Two
would.
more starts for Jacob Markstrom.
I would do the same, except I would say, you know, go with Markstrom against Tampa, Allen against Florida. Look at how each of those games goes, and then ride the hot hand against a rival in Philly. But other than that, I think you nailed it in terms of how you should approach that from a goaltending perspective. But that brings us to the end of another great Puck on the Parkway episode. I promised we would get you out before Monday Night Football has started, but I
And
believe it kicked off.
I believe it just kicked off, so we're
My
fine.
bad.
So we're
Let's get
good.
out of
No,
here.
we're good.
For Dan Rebane, I've been James Burley. This has been Puck on the Parkway. The Devils will be without Jack Hughes for 2 months, but can they continue to win? We'll see. Thanks for watching.
Thank you.